You can tell things have gotten rough when folks start assuming whole states have given up on improving and just made peace with the misery as their new normal. That's exactly what we're digging into today. States that look like they've thrown in the towel on getting any better. Let's dig in. Number 10. New Mexico. This place is the undisputed champ of almost. Almost a solid economy. Almost a fine spot to raise kids. Almost a state that cracked the code. It's been parked in that holding pattern for decades, like the very idea of commitment terrifies it. Sooner or later, you figure out that potential is just a realtor's polite phrasing for nothing has improved and this place still stinks. The job scene around here is roughly as thrilling as a church bulletin from 2003. Opportunities exist, sure, but they're spread thin and hardly shout long-term security. Plenty of the younger crowd treat New Mexico as a layover rather than a place to land. The maddening part is that the state owns plenty of what matters: culture, scenery, low cost of living, and a one-of-a-kind identity that other states would happily fight over. And still, the reaction is forever some shrug paired with a, yeah, we're working on it sort of energy. But rather than building anything on that foundation, it simply drifts, like a car coasting downhill with the gear in neutral. Number 9. Alaska. Alaska is gorgeous in the same way a stripper is gorgeous. Stunning to admire, just not all that workable for the long run for most folks. For ages, oil propped up the whole operation, and the state seemed strangely fine with that arrangement. Then the world shifted, and Alaska never really adjusted. It just sort of froze in place like a person who suddenly clued in that they'd tuned out the middle of a conversation. The population figures spell it out. People arrive. They sample the cost of living and the isolation, and then they vanish in a hurry. The whole thing sounds fantastic while you're browsing the aisles at REI. Pack up for Alaska. Live off the land. Get back to God's country. Befriend a moose and brush off everyone warning you it's a mistake because you've totally got this. You know precisely what you're walking into. You devoured every magazine and you've logged hours on the Discovery Channel. Then the first time a bear turns up on your porch, you fill your pants. But the actual trouble for Alaska is that the oil business has transformed, and there's barely any plan B. So rather than diversifying with any urgency, Alaska comes across like it's parked there hoping the glory days swing back around. That isn't a plan. That's nostalgia with a balance sheet problem. Number 8. Louisiana. Louisiana packs more character than 5 other states put together. Trouble is, character doesn't patch up roads or cover the bills. Sooner or later, that charm slams into hard reality, a bit like trying to settle your rent with a painting you whipped up yourself. The state has been wrestling the same fundamental problems for generations: poverty, struggling schools, and infrastructure that looks like it weathered a few storms too many, mostly because it did. And somehow, every bit of progress plays out like one stride ahead, followed by 2 shuffles to the side. Each time Louisiana builds a little momentum, something clobbers it back down. A corruption scandal, a hurricane, a spike in crime. Take your pick. They make efforts to turn things around, and none of it ever quite holds. It's not that the residents are indifferent. It's that the whole system seems to have quit trying to fix things on any real scale. Louisiana isn't falling apart. It's just permanently parked in recovery mode. Over my life, I've passed through Louisiana plenty of times. Spent time in New Orleans, in Shreveport, in Alexandria, and a handful of little towns. Hit up the little towns if you want the real Louisiana. The folks out there are amazing, genuinely salt-of-the-earth people. So it's once you reach the cities that things really take a turn for the worse. Garbage all over the place. Just comes off as grimy and run down. Now, the smaller communities are absolutely soaked in poverty. They look rough too, but at least they've got a bit of that natural charm to them. I don't know. I keep hoping Louisiana turns a corner. They just never seem to, and they're forever turning up on the most corrupt state rankings right alongside Illinois. Number 7, West Virginia. This state didn't merely lean on coal, it wedded it. The two built a house together, and it named the kids after it. Coal wasn't just a sector of the economy, it was the whole identity of the place. The paychecks, the reason the power stayed on, and the reason certain towns ever popped up to begin with. And as that began slipping away, the state didn't so much chart a new course as plant its feet and gawk, like somebody watching their go-to diner burn down while insisting it'll be back open by next Tuesday. Cruise through West Virginia, and you can almost catch the echo of a better era. And not in some charming historic sense either. More of a did everybody just pop out for a second and forget to return kind of feeling. Certain towns feel like the clock got hit with pause back around the mid-1990s and nobody ever managed to dig up the remote to unpause it. There are a few modernization pushes, sure, but they read more like patch jobs slapped on something that needed a total teardown roughly 2 decades back. The population slide isn't subtle or hard to explain. People bail because they crave options, and options aren't exactly spilling over in West Virginia. Work is scarce. The opportunities are skinnier than they ought to be, and the younger residents glance around and figure, yeah, maybe I should sample somewhere that's got internet and dentists. And once they've gone, they rarely feel much tug to head back, which is sort of the whole issue. You know, there are loads of states folks circle back to once they've started a family. They want to return to Ohio, Wisconsin, Minnesota, even Texas. It's home. They grind it out somewhere else for a stretch and then realize their family would be better off back in the home state. Yeah, that's just not something that happens with West Virginia. What truly stings West Virginia isn't the loss of coal. It's that they never swapped in anything else that could push the state ahead. There's no grand second act waiting for West Virginia, no fresh industry trotting in like a relief pitcher to rescue the inning. Instead, the state seems to just hang around waiting for the old playbook to magically click again. Coal will stick around, but it'll never again be what it used to be. Naturally, the politicians love to hype the locals with that coal jobs are on their way back line. Then they floated that clean coal nonsense for a stretch. They're basically pinning their hopes on something that's just not coming back. Number 6, Mississippi. Mississippi is remarkably reliable. Sadly, it's reliable in all the categories you wouldn't want. Bottom-tier marks in education, healthcare, and income have pretty much turned into the state's calling card. I mean, is anybody actually surprised? Mississippi has been hurting ever since the days of unpaid labor came to an end. People tend to forget this was once among the wealthiest states in the country, and then it had to start actually paying for the work. Every handful of years, there's chatter about a turnaround, fresh initiatives, fresh leadership, fresh promises, and then the whole thing slides right back into the identical groove, with nothing actually shifting. There are bright spots, but none of them are large enough to move the bigger picture. It's like redoing the decor on a house while flat out ignoring the cracks in the foundation. Looks lovely for about a minute, and then reality knocks. I've got family from Mississippi. The majority have cleared out, and it's for every reason Mississippi struggles. A few stuck around, but most of them split over jobs, over wanting a better place to bring up kids. Mississippi just gives off the sense it quit caring. And eventually, the rest of the country quit expecting anything from it too. Number 5, Illinois. Illinois is what you get when a single superstar gets stuck dragging a whole roster on their back. Chicago shoulders the load while the rest of the state scrambles to keep pace. The snag is that Chicago has plenty of its own baggage. Crime, taxes, and that tide of people pouring out of the city like the buildings ablaze. You know how it goes. When your best player starts to falter, everybody else feels the tremor. Step beyond the metro, and things go hushed. Not a calm, pleasant hush, more of an economic hush. Towns that really ought to have some forward push now feel like they're just gripping whatever's left, rather than constructing anything fresh. I mean, Chicago is a heavyweight city, and stuff is constantly in flux there. The crime is mostly boxed into a small cluster of neighborhoods. Sure, crime exists everywhere, but the notorious stuff, the kind that's made Chicago infamous, lives in just a few pockets. The rest of the city runs on pretty ordinary crime numbers, and that's before we even get to the politicians. They've usually got their own racket running. Now, Illinois hasn't thrown in the towel entirely, but it's clearly come to terms with hemorrhaging people. And when that starts feeling routine, it's tough to label it anything but an exodus. Number 4, Nevada. Nevada wrapped its whole identity around entertainment and tourism, which is terrific right up until it isn't. Whenever the economy sags, Nevada gets hit quicker than most states, and it gets hit hard. Las Vegas is still a juggernaut, but it doubles as a reminder of just how hooked the state is on one single industry. That's a dicey foundation, no matter how high you pile the casinos. Now, the other thing Nevada has stacks of is government jobs. Those do help. They don't evaporate as readily as the tourism gigs, but they still lean pretty heavily on Las Vegas and Reno. And if you've got any clue what's happening in Vegas at the moment, the place is practically a ghost town, so I imagine they're really hurting right now. And when I call it a ghost town, don't come at me with, oh, but they pulled in over 4 million visitors just this month. Look, overall it's way down across the past year and a half. Now, housing costs out here have shot up. The infrastructure is scrambling to catch up, and the boom-bust cycle just loops over and over. It's like the state is strapped onto a financial roller coaster it can't climb off of. Rather than diversifying with any real aggression, Nevada keeps betting harder on what it already knows. That's not confidence. That's praying. The same gimmick pays off indefinitely. You know, a long time back, they sort of reshaped Las Vegas into something more family-friendly, with amusement park-style attractions to lure families in, the idea being they'd vacation there and spend money. Obviously, the casino is always the headline act. Then somewhere around the mid-2000s, they just dropped that whole angle. Personally, I think maybe they ought to circle back to it. But hey, I'm just some outsider who doesn't know what he's on about. It's only a thought I've been kicking around. But a lot of people figure Nevada has basically given up on reinventing itself and is just clinging to the hope that the crowds come flooding back to Las Vegas. Number 3. Arkansas. This one has an odd pattern of nearly leveling up and then instantly flinching like it brushed a hot burner. You'll spot a new development, a company growth. Wing, a town pulling itself together, and then the whole thing gets weirdly stalled like, hold on now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's almost as if the state carries a fear of success. Arkansas has plenty going for it, yet it never quite trains its attention on the stuff that actually needs attention, so it stays planted at 40th for education and 7th for poverty rate. Now, in fairness, there are corners of Arkansas doing pretty well, and they're a total world apart from the rest of Arkansas. There's a giant chasm between the northwest corner and everywhere else. Feels like they belong to two separate countries. Honestly, two separate planets. 16.3% of the population lives under the poverty line. Northwest Arkansas has cash, growth, jobs, and genuine momentum. It's like the one kid in the group project carrying the entire load while everybody else rolls in late and forgot to bring a pencil. The catch is that the second you exit the bubble of Northwest Arkansas, it starts feeling like you've slipped into an entirely different state that somehow missed the memo about moving forward. You'll hit towns where barely anything has shifted in years, and not in the cozy, we cherish our traditions way. More of a, everyone here bought their trailer back in the Reagan era and hasn't run a mower or fixed a thing since way. The divide between the areas that are holding up and the ones that are floundering isn't a subtle one. It's the sort of split where one spot is breaking ground on new subdivisions, and 10 miles down the road, there's a town the Amazon truck flat out refuses to enter. Education and healthcare don't exactly fill you with confidence either. Arkansas keeps landing near the floor of the national rankings, like it's on a quest to collect the whole set. You'll find programs, initiatives, committees, and probably a handful of sternly worded emails drifting around, but the outcomes crawl along at a speed that says nobody around here is in any rush. And that's really the through line. Arkansas didn't crumble. It didn't blow up. It simply hit a moment where it went, hey, this'll do. We're going to run this thing until the wheels come off. And in a lot of those towns, the wheels came off back in the 1980s. Which is exactly why most of America figures Arkansas tapped out decades ago. Number 2. California. Home prices have soared to figures that practically belong in fiction. The middle class didn't merely get pinched in California. In certain areas, it got shoved out altogether. And yet the state carries on like it's simply the cost of admission. You've got terrific weather, you've got beaches, what else could you possibly need? California remains one of the most powerful places on the planet, not merely in the country, and that's what makes all this so aggravating. They've got it all. Yet for a big slice of the population, actually living there is next to impossible. People are heading out now. Not at the clip we saw during the pandemic, but they're still shedding residents. It's a steady trickle of people relocating to spots where buying a home doesn't hinge on hitting the lottery. This isn't some minor hiccup. It's a blinking warning light. What partly rescues California is that loads of people are still pouring into the state. The real wrinkle is that the longtime residents are the ones packing up. Third-generation Californians or deeper make up just 24.9% of the state's people. Over in Texas, that figure hits 44%. Look at places like Iowa and Nebraska, and it climbs into the 70s. California didn't abandon success, it abandoned balance, and sooner or later that catches up to you, however mighty the economy reads on paper. Now then, before we hit number 1, if you've been mulling a move to another state, another city, anywhere across the United States, there's a link in the description below for a site called Home and Money. They'll connect you with a real estate agent in any corner of the country. Okay, on to the top spot. And number 1, New York. New York coasts on reputation, and to be fair, it built that reputation across a very long run. The hitch is that reputation doesn't repair present-day problems. New York City remains a global heavyweight, but it's also staggeringly expensive and steadily harder for ordinary people to manage. For a lot of residents, living there turns into more of an endurance test than a land of opportunity. Get outside the city, and things deteriorate fast. Shrinking population, aging communities, and dwindling opportunities add up to a completely different reality than the picture in people's heads when New York gets mentioned. The state still carries itself like it's untouchable, but once you dig into the figures and the trends, it looks more like it's quietly bleeding ground while swearing up and down that everything's fine. It's not fine. They're handing back seats in Congress thanks to just how many people have walked away. All right, that wraps today's video. If that one did it for you, you'll probably enjoy one of the 2 clips popping up on screen right now. Everybody, take care and be good to one another.